All right. Hey, and everyone, we are live. So welcome everyone to another edition of Cannabis Culture Podcast, and we are live here on Rogue 420. We're also live on Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine, and we're also live on the 7888 Media Group. So I want to welcome. It's a very exciting opportunity. I appreciate everyone's patience as we got started here. And the primary reason why we're doing this is because we have a very special event that we're delivering today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have Laura just walk us through as far as, where she is and what she's doing as far as this event. So Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Well, we've got.
Yay!
Well, we are at the Oklahoma Medical Cannabis Information Resource Center in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. We are with John Frazier, Old School Media, Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine, Joshua and Lindsay with Green Relief. We're with Roger Doris, Rain and Storm from Wake Up and Grow with Stormy. And we're with Renee Harper of Green Hope Wellness, Dr. Dory Abbott, Dr. Regina Nelson is somewhere. But we are going to be getting Bella Madison here, who is my daughter, her recommendation, her second pediatric recommendation live, so that we can create awareness for other mothers who may need, other parents, mothers and fathers who may need help or support and looking for alternate avenues for health and resources through cannabis.
How was she sick?
She was misdiagnosed with eczema multitude of times. She was told that she just had the worst case of eczema that they'd ever seen, and that it was never going to go away. We just had to manage it. She was pulling chunks of skin out of her arms, and she was losing feeling in her fingers and her toes as she had enlarged nerves, and her kidneys were shutting down. She also had parasites and heavy metal poisoning. So we are healing her through hyperbaric chamber treatment. We are healing her through the electronic frequency treatments. We're doing nutrition, and we're going to be doing the ECS therapy as soon as her recommendation goes through.
So you're doing
we're here to create alternate.
The whole deal.
That's
right.
right.
Right on. The whole spectrum.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, we are. So we're going to basically combine all of those different resources for health and put them together so that she can be healed from them. The whole
inside and out.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's awesome. It really
is. That's truly amazing. And this conversation and what we're doing right now is just so important. And when you think of the current health conditions of our children, when you think of the amount of prescription medications that our children are introduced to at a very young age, it's amazing to me. And I had one friend who's actually in a school nursing scenario. She had volunteered. She'd considered actually becoming a school nurse. And she shared a story with me that she had volunteered, and she was working in one school in particular. And when she went to open up the medicine cabinet for the prescription medications that were there for the school children, she was alarmed. She was alarmed at the amount of medications that our children are being prescribed. And so now we have some very viable alternatives to health solutions for our kids, for our families. So Laura, I applaud you for being brave enough to share your story, share your journey with our entire community, who I feel is more of a family than anything at this stage. And we're all working together to achieve quality of life outcomes utilizing medical cannabis for our families. Now, full disclosure, before we go into this conversation, just to keep us all out of harm's way, we do recommend to ensure that you follow all legal procedures for your states. Ensure that you consult with a medical professional before you begin using medical cannabis. So I just want to say that at the beginning, because I think that's the responsible thing to do. So Laura, I'm going to turn it right back over to you. I know you've had a long day. You've been, working very diligently to take care of your daughter. So why don't you go ahead and share your journey, where you've been, where you currently are, and the progress moving forward.
Well, I mean, she's 4, so it's been a long process. We spent many nights with no sleep because she itches herself to death. We've had many doctors tell us there's nothing wrong with her as she's crying herself to sleep every day. And we just decided that we weren't going to Yeah, he's talking to me. Can you say hi to CJ? Can you say hi?
Hi, CJ.
I know I'm funny looking. She's like, oh my gosh.
Funny looking CJ. So we decided to not take their answers, and we created our own path. So we've connected with Dr. Dory here, who is amazing. After one treatment with Dr. Dory's electronic frequency treatment, half of the things that were going on in her body were already completely rectified.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
I mean, her skin after almost 4 years was almost clear after one treatment of electronic frequencies. And then we did hyperbaric oxygen chamber treatment, where we put her inside the hyperbaric chamber and they high pressurize the oxygen into her body so it can push out the toxins. Hold on one second, please. And then we also do the nutrition treatment, and we're going to be incorporating the ECS therapy, so that way we can get the topical under control for the itching. But other than that, we're just watching a process of growth. And clearly her energy's coming back.
Right. Absolutely. And as a parent, I think, all of us, whenever our children, are sick or whatever, the emotional toll that it takes on of us. And there's even statistics to show that with, parents who have kids with potentially chronic health illnesses, the amount of stress and everything that we endure that almost eventually leads to post-traumatic PTSDs for providers, for our kids that, go through these health situations. And today you're at the Oklahoma Medical Cannabis Information Resource Center that are helping to facilitate this today. And I know we have several other guests. So Laura, if you could take a moment and just introduce the rest of our guests on the podcast, that'd be super.
Well, I think I did that, but
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we've got Josh and Lindsay with Green Relief here. They're on TMP Mother Plant and 788 Media. We've got John Frazier, Old School and Company, and Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine. We've got Renee Harper, Green Hope Wellness. We've got Dr. Dory. She does electronic frequency treatments, Infinity Wellness. And basically, we're just here creating avenues. We've got Stormy. We've got Wake Up and Grow with Storm. And we're unfortunately missing our Mary Jane Media or DC today because he had some other things to take care of in Oklahoma City, but he's with us in spirit. Yep. And Roger Doris, of course, who cannot be forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're getting some recommendations today. One for my daughter, she's going to get her second recommendation, and then we also have some other people who've come in to get their recommendations today as well.
Now, this is basically a pediatric recommendation drive. That is cool because we've had a lot of patient drives. We've never really had just a specific pediatric patient drive.
Well, today's not the pediatric drive. Today's the pediatric recommendation. Now, I will say Dana Malone is having a pediatric drive tomorrow on Saturday at the Old Apothecary.
Well, there you go then.
Yeah, and she's going to be here tonight for the documentary because she's wanting to meet Ashley and all of these wonderful people. So
I mean, we really got an audience.
We can start. Cool. Well, we're planning on going to Washington.
Right on.
No, not planning. We're going.
We're going.
Oh, there you go. There you
That's
go.
a definitive answer. There
Yes.
is no
Yeah.
We are going to Washington in January.
Hey, Laura or John, if you could kind of explain exactly what a pediatric drive is, because there may be some people listening that aren't quite certain what that is. So if one of you could dive a little bit deeper into that, please.
You know what? I'm going to let Renee Harper speak on
Let's
this.
bring Renee in. Renee needs to come into the screen a little bit. Yeah.
We're going to play a little musical chairs.
Absolutely.
So this is Renee Harper. She's the owner of Green Hope Wellness, and
Hi, Renee.
passion and purpose for what she's doing, and I'm going to let her take it.
So pediatric drives, they're different everywhere. Some people do it for free. I've kind of always thought, doctors with 788, a physician can lose their license for a bad outcome. So they have a due diligence. And so I've always wanted to attach a price to it, but I do a lot of free things. So if you see us doing something at Green Hope that's free for pediatrics or something, it's because I picked up the bill for it. The doctors still get paid. So, but they have them. They have them all over the place. And then I forgot what I was going to say. They have them quite a few places, but pediatric recommendations are different in that they need to see 2 physicians, and then they'll have they can either have a caregiver or not have a caregiver, depending on their age and their ability to make a decision as to what medicine would be beneficial for them as well. So with pediatrics, we do require that they have something with a diagnosis on it from a physician for the doctors. But other than that, it's just
So the 2.
the
you get
2,
the
and then the
first
caregiver part is free. So you'll be
Right, which I got that form.
you
Didn't I?
got that form, but not the other one. So
Right. And that's one of the unique things in regards to Oklahoma in terms of the patient, the care provider. So in essence, the care provider would carry the license for their child. Is that correct in terms of when you actually apply for the license for the individual?
So if they have a caregiver when they're a minor, your picture will be on there. So they have to have an adult with them anyway, whether they have a caregiver or not, to get in the dispensary. But then the child could say whatever they wanted.
Right, they can say whatever they want, but they can't purchase
Right, they
it.
can't purchase it.
Right, they have to have their caregiver or their parent.
Right. And then in terms of a resource center, then do you work, with the doctors to inform them as far as, their actual prescription and what they're utilizing for, and how does that collaboration work with the supporting medical team to help understand exactly the treatment and the course of action as far as helping the individual?
So this is different. It's not a prescription. So cannabis is a recommendation, and a physician cannot educate.
Yes, thank you.
They cannot educate the patients, but me being a nurse or a layperson can educate them. So Dr. Regina Nelson, who is not here right now, she has written cannabis journals. And so when you come to my clinic, if you are not familiar with cannabis or you want help with treatment, I use that journal, and then I give you your target dose. Give everybody 30 days to get there. If you get there before, good. But we've talked about going low and starting slow and low and slow. Yeah. And so we kind of just I give cannabis treatment plans to the patients, and I do free how to medicate with cannabis classes 2 or 3 times a month at my clinic, and then my dispensary's like 4 doors down. But we do incorporate like a lot of what Dory Abbott does here with the frequency and hyperbaric, and I bought hyperbaric for my clinic last week. So.
Sure. It really, yeah.
I was going to say that's a lot of people make that same mistake. They're so used to talking about prescriptions that we're trying to get them to re-educate into recommendations here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think it's hats off to you in terms of what you do to help patients and individuals, and even more taking a holistic, natural approach to health. I think it's something that I get excited. Laura, we've talked about this before, that how there are certain things that are coming online, and how I like to coin it is just disruptive approaches to medicine. And when you take a look, like here in the United States, where we see life expectancy is actually on the decline, when we see the amount of the opioid crisis that's occurred, there's several people that are actually resourcing this. And in Oklahoma, you guys are doing some very unique things in terms of, this is a perfect example. So the model that you guys are bringing, so hats off to you, the model that you guys are developing here could help other states as they approach either legalization or helping individuals. Because, as we know, Oklahoma was a ballot initiative to get this passed. Now, help refresh my memory, because there's no certain health conditions that are qualifying in Oklahoma, correct? It's more
right. So we're the only state that a physician can actually lose their license for a bad outcome. So, they don't educate because they can't. Then it makes it a prescription, and that's illegal. So,
yeah.
But I've always called it my business model has always been functional medicine, to incorporate some things that we've kind of pushed aside. And last time I was here, when I met Dory, she tweaked the inner nerd inside of me. She was talking about the scan that she does test for heavy metals, pesticides, and I said, all the stuff we test our medicine for.
Yes.
And so,
Which is
I think we're really
that's
on.
pretty
Yeah,
eye-opening, isn't it?
Yep.
I never thought about we are contaminated with all the
Absolutely.
metal, everything we've taken for the
Yep.
medicines
everything
over
that-
years and years.
Medicine, the technology,
put
everything that's being
mercury in
pumped
our
into our
food.
system,
Yeah.
water, our water supply
Yeah.
system, I mean, everything that
Think
we're.
about all the chlorine and just, pesticides that have gone just throughout our tap.
Yes, and that was one of the things that whenever we did the scan for Bella and she came out with the, the heavy metal poisoning, I mean, that's what it's from.
But
Is
since
is
we're
the water,
talking about-
taking baths in the water.
Since we're talking about Dr. Dory, we need to do another magical cheers, and
Let's do
I'll
it.
move on out of here. Da, 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 da,
I'm gonna
da,
skip.
da, da.
As long as your cord's long enough there, Lordy.
Oh, it's fine. I'm not worried about that.
Hello, Dr. Dory. It's
How are you?
Good. It's a pleasure to virtually meet you.
Guys.
I say that more times than not. So why don't you give a little introduction of yourself, and then how did you get started in this journey of utilizing medical cannabis?
I was in education for 30 years. That's what I thought I would do forever. I was a principal for a while, a teacher, guidance counselor. I just enjoyed all the different aspects of education, taught high school for a long time. And I, 7 years ago, ended up in a wheelchair and I couldn't walk and I couldn't talk. One day I was fine and the next day I was just toast. And they told me I had multiple sclerosis and that I'd had it for 20 years and it had been eating away at my brain and my spinal cord and all that. I'm like, well, somebody should have told me, but nobody did. And so what they didn't tell me, because this is not what anybody's really looking for, was that I had mercury poisoning. I had mercury toxicity from having dental work done 9 years prior, and the mercury gas went right into my brain. Nobody told me that. Some random rogue nutritionist at a chiropractor's office who happened to be passing through just said, you might have heavy metal poisoning. And I'm like, bang, what? And so that chiropractor I was doing some work for him and he ended up just paying for me to have the chelation therapy. I mean, he just provided it for me. And I was like, okay, cool. And 9 months later, when I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't cognate, I couldn't read, it felt like everything was in Russian. All of a sudden, bam, my brain came back and I was like, oh, yay, she's back. So that was cool. And,
So that was cool.
That was totally cool. But I still had the whole thing of having to learn how to walk again on a walker and then on a cane. And then eventually over several years of being in remission, kickboxing and line dancing and riding my bike again. And I mean, it's just so awesome. Cannabis was a big part of that because I couldn't stop tremoring, not only from Herxheimer's reaction, which when you're killing stuff off or pulling stuff out, but also just from the MS itself. I was so shaky for 24 hours a day for months. And somebody suggested to me, you need some cannabis. And I was like, where would I start with that? Right? Where would I start with that? Because in Tennessee, it's not legal. And so we sure enough, that really helped me. And then that was the beginning of my journey. And I changed my whole aspect, my whole perspective on that, because I was like, this whole thing that, like, especially my concern is like the way that the church is not behind it. And right now I'm working on a book called The Garden of Eden. Do not steal that. Do not steal.
You better trademark that real quick, Dr. Dory.
Like with a marijuana leaf on them instead of a cannabis leaf on them instead of a fig leaf. So, but the thing is, we're on the wrong side of that fight. We should be on this side because this is mandated in scripture, and the plants of the field, the leaves of the tree are for our healing. And that's, so that's kind of one of my passions. So as I began to research how to heal myself, I started realizing, change my perspective on everything. Now I'm a holistic health practitioner. I got certified in that, working on cannabis educator certification. So it's exciting because I see people in their 80s who are struggling with Alzheimer's, which is really just type 3 diabetes. I see them struggling with Alzheimer's, and the same things, basic things work for them that work for a 3-year-old or 4-year-old like Bella. She came in, I said, that's not eczema. I've seen eczema. That is not eczema. We did the scan. Sure enough, lots of parasites and bacterial infection. And of course, once you open the skin, you're going to have a lot of bacterial infection. So, I mean, just kids love frequencies. Like, they just put on a bone conducting headset. They're just sitting there chilling out, watching YouTube, and their bodies love it. I guess it just hasn't been that long since they remember, you know, they don't have so long to remember how their bodies are supposed to function. And I think of it in terms of light as well. This is kind of strange, but we can all agree that everything's energy, right? Albert Einstein taught us this. Energy is not created or destroyed. First law of thermodynamics. It's our birthright. It's always been here. It always will be here. So energy is everything, and everything is energy. Well, if you start thinking about it, we know there's light and dark energy, right?
Yes.
Light energy would be love, strongest power, most powerful thing in the universe. Dark energy would be hate. Very forceful, very powerful. Light always wins, but there is dark and light energy. You know, dark energy would be fear. You know, light energy would be faith. So we know there's a duality there between dark and light energy. If we supplant the word energy with force, then we talk about dark force and light force. We all know that's a thing too. If I were part of the dark force and I wanted to take really important people out, people who have a mission, we all have a mission, we all have a purpose, but people who are really influencers, I would do it by blocking their light. Absolutely. And this is something I just learned from Dietrich Klinghardt, who's just an awesome, amazing doctor, is basically when we talk about an aura, that people have an aura, it's light coming out of their body, light energy. Where does that come from? It comes from every cell in the body, the mitochondria produce light. Photons that actually come out. But they also, they receive light. The mitochondria, which is the powerhouses of our cells, every cell in our body that has that powerhouse that's creating energy is also absorbing light. So if I were going to take somebody out, I would create a situation where they couldn't absorb light and they couldn't reflect good light. That's what happens when your body has toxins in it, like heavy metals, parasites, mold, fungus, and embedded bacteria and viruses like Epstein-Barr, Borrelia, Lyme disease. So this is what I do every day. I do a bioenergetic scan to see what exactly is going on, and then I help them take care of that by reminding the body with sound frequencies about what it's supposed to vibrate at. Everything vibrates at a particular frequency. So thank you. When you bring back that frequency, when you bring back that body to that place of homeostasis, that's where real healing takes place.
That's why you tweet my nerdiness, because
very well said. Absolutely. I agree with everything that you just said. And Laura keeps introducing to me all these people that, needless to say, we're going to be streaming 24/7 so that we can share the wonderful work that everyone is doing there in Oklahoma. But I agree in terms of that sense. And I think there's a lot to say to that. For example, just who you surround yourself. And you had mentioned, vibration and energy. And, when you're around constant, negative people that are, dragging you down, it pollutes the body. And that's why they say surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, people that are going to inspire you and bring you forward. Let's talk a little bit for a minute, just in terms of, because right now the science application is still, catching up a little bit in terms of medical cannabis, and it's really no one's fault. It's primarily because it was a Schedule I, and that's why a lot of the research isn't there. But that's starting to change with the clinical studies and everything else like that. But you mentioned it at the very beginning when you talked a little bit around dosing and starting slow and going. Could you go a little bit more into detail as far as that approach? Because that's so important, because what you don't want is someone's very first time sampling with medical cannabis and they have a very bad first time utilizing it, where they completely get turned off from even sampling and using cannabis as a viable health solution. So could you take a minute and just talk about that initial, like the dosing, and how sometimes that's difficult because all of us are a little bit different in terms of how we process THC and how THC affects some people. It doesn't, a little bit differently. Can you take a moment and just go through that a little bit high level, please?
So Regina's done a really great job in her journal that I use. So it's weight-based. It's by kilograms. And so we set the target dose. And then, like I say, we'll give you a month to get there. So you're not going to get over 5 to 10 milligrams of THC in any dose starting out. Regina also wrote protocol for the the oil that I use and everything. So we microdose that, and all of it's on the labeling there. And as well, I have them get a choline supplement if they've never done THC, and some people need a higher dosage or to build fairly quick or something like that. And if you get a choline supplement and take it in the morning, then that kind of dampens that psychoactivity of the THC. And the journal is very thorough. So I go through and talk to them about, are they on medications that they're wanting to get off of, exactly what symptoms you're treating, what diseases you're treating, and then exactly what we give them, what we recommend. And then they bring that journal back to us, and I encourage them to take it to their physician. Take it to your
absolutely.
doctor. That teaches them.
Absolutely.
That teaches us. And that's a great way to learn. So
yeah. Now, through your journey and with the work and the collaboration you're doing there, now will this be a published journal at some point? Because I'm sure the data has just got to be so immense in terms of the data and how you're gathering that and the patients and all that. So is that something that you're looking towards as far as publishing a journal at some point on your key findings so that others can take, leverage that knowledge of what you've provided and studied, because this work is just so important that you're doing.
Yeah, so as a nurse, going into this, it was always my heart to do research so we could publish articles. So when they say, oh, cannabis doesn't work with autistic children, I would love to hand them a piece of paper that says, I have this research that says otherwise. That's what changes things in healthcare, because doctors are scientists. And I worked in the ICU for years, and if they could stand there and look at a patient, a nurse can tell when they're sick or not. But if it wasn't, that wasn't something that the scientific physician knew, and I'm not talking bad about them, they're just scientists. But that's how you convince them. And
yeah,
so
I completely agree. We don't have to sit here and in terms of the current medical situation, it's just that unfortunately you don't know what you don't know. So therefore they have been conditioned for so long with certain aspects of practice, whether it's getting introduced to medications and how medications work. And so this is a huge learning curve as well for the medical professional community. And what I find is what's truly amazing is that every day there's more and more of a larger group that are willing to engage, to understand how and why this is happening. So therefore that clinical study is going to help to provide and validate those test case scenarios, those programs, those clinical studies, to actually include other doctors, more traditional, who maybe have been skeptics in the past of validating with these studies. So hats off to you. And it looks like we have another guest.
we have guests on both sides.
Would you
Want me to move?
Yep. Want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Lindsay with Green Relief, Josh and Lindsay. Sorry, I didn't know which one you were talking to.
No. Hi, Lindsay.
She's like, put me on the spot, please.
Lindsay, why don't you go ahead while you're here and go ahead and share a little bit about Green Relief and what you guys do there in Oklahoma.
Well, what we like to do is we are trying to educate people about what strands work best, especially for veterans who've been dropped off their medications. A lot of times that tends to happen, and we're trying to educate everyone on about those strands and how it can be used. Just the plant in general and how all.
Yeah, that's great. And if you think if there's any one group of individuals in regards to our veterans who, for the most part, have been overlooked through a lot of things, whether it was the VA, and now you take a look at what cannabis is helping them with, and particularly with PTSD, but different health situations. So congratulations, and I'm glad that you guys are doing that in Oklahoma. That's terrific.
It's just especially important when they've been dropped off the medications to find something that will work for them, because when you're just suddenly dropped off something, you have to
works
find a way.
better than a lot of the
And it works actually a lot better most of the time, and is all natural.
Yep.
We're going to speak from the science of it real quick. You don't
Yes,
see me.
go for it.
You'll meet me in just a minute. I would like to introduce this woman. She's actually an advocate. Would you like to just go ahead and tell a little bit about your name, what you do, your title, and
My name's Taffy, and
I am a member of the Democratic Disability Federation, but I also am trying to start a task force for autism, for autistic kids in this state. They're deeply underserved and have been underserved for 30 years. And I know this because I had twins who ended up regressing into high functioning autism at 15 months. And we were told to let them cry out static encephalopathy that they developed instead of getting appropriate treatment and appropriate diagnosis. It's been quite a journey, but then I was called to find out about anything and everything that I could to help my children, especially when our son ended up developing kidney failure 6 years ago. And it was because he was he was over vaccinated. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's great. And perhaps maybe offline, I need to get your information because I do have a lot of resources as it relates to cannabis for autism. There's Israel, the nation of Israel, is really on the front edge. You're probably already aware of this. And one of the women who I've had the honor and privilege of putting in my network is Abigail Dar. And Abigail Dar in Israel actually has a clinic for cannabis for autism. So I'd maybe perhaps some point I'd definitely love to put her in your network and some other individuals to kind of help you on that. That's something that does hit close to home because when we see those videos of the self-injuring children who literally have to wear the helmets, who there's no, it's the most difficult thing to watch, and what parent can sit there and deal with that day in and day out. And it's probably the most underserved segment of occurring. And the challenging thing is that the kids that were the diagnosis, they're becoming adults now. And eventually in a lot of points, they eventually drop off some of those services once they become adults. So great work, and I'll be following your work, but I'd love to connect with you offline some point so that I can share with you some of those resources.
that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're gonna spin it around. I've been that loud voice that you've been hearing. My name is Ashley Rawson. I'm absolutely honored to host this group today. You were at the Oklahoma Cannabis Information Resource Center, and quick, I think that people go through pain in their lives sometimes in order to enhance others' lives. And so the tragedy that occurred in mine was my 15-year-old nephew was diagnosed with epilepsy. 4 months after the diagnosis, he died. And I was living in Dubai at the time. I didn't have a chance to really get back here, and a lot of information cannabis related is blocked over there. I kept hearing about families moving to Colorado, and I was like, okay, what is this? When I started looking into it, it was mind-boggling that this is a Schedule I medication, and I wanted to do something about it. So I started going all over the United States. I went to farms, I went to processors, and I ended up networking with some old school marijuana, a group out of California. And so my mentor was 75. She would smack my hand when I said weed or pot, because she said, if you don't use the medical terms, we're never going to change the stigma. And
Amen.
So she's opened dispensaries in 4 states. She told me, I will help you open a compliant dispensary, which she did. But you have to promise me to have a resource center. So the purpose of this resource center is it's a waiting room for patients who want to see a physician. And then, as you alluded to earlier, doctors cannot talk about what to use, how to use it, how to administer it, or where to get it. So they're with the doctor, and then they meet with a cannabis coordinator who I have trained. And essentially what we go over is the politics and how it began in the 40s with the paper industry. The fact that it was passed in the 70s with Henry Anslinger. And then I show him a DEA, a quote actually that he said about jazz musicians and satanic music. And the fact that it's a federally Schedule I drug, people can't believe it. Hemp is not psychoactive. People can't believe it. And so they don't know the difference between hemp and marijuana either. So we go over the fact that hemp paper industries basically couldn't compete. They lobbied, they ended up, and here we are getting literal fake news for this long. And so Our passion is not giving a recommendation and sending them out the door. Our passion is helping patients understand, and we briefly talked about ratio dosing. My clinic, most of our patients are over the age of 50. And I think it's because we have a medical atmosphere. We wear scrubs.
Yep.
It's not rec focused at all.
Mhm.
We have them in a private consultation room where they're able to ask in a legal, professional, medical atmosphere questions I've never used before. Then we talk to them about, well, we've got a 10-to-1. It's 10 part CBD, 1 part THC. A lot of 60-year-olds, I don't want to get high. And when I look at them and say, honey, you don't have to, they cry with relief. They hug me because they have hope. I see people come in here with zero hope, horrible quality of life. And then I see transformations that I talk about all day long. I get hugs and goosebumps because what I get to see is truly miraculous, and it's coming from a simple plant. But education is absolutely crucial.
And we're actually caring these people and taking the time, and that's
Exactly.
something that they're not
Exactly.
used to.
Exactly. And I also wanted to kind of point out, except we added these guys, but just a minute ago, all you had was a panel of women. We're leading this industry, by the way.
Mhm. Yep.
And no offense to gentlemen, but I think that a lot of it has to do with taking the compassionate route, nurturing patients, nurturing our plants, helping people to learn how to grow at home.
Like we nurture our children.
Like we nurture our children. You know,
Yeah.
these patients are our children. We care so much about them, and we get to see all of this happening. We're so excited to spread the word and educate and help really people get better.
Yeah. No, you said so many important things, and I, you know, and I agree. It's amazing when you look at the history of cannabis and its use, and you pointed out back to the paper and the textiles, and you know, even dated back to the slavery, and that's why in part when I, you know, the word marijuana in itself is more of a racial overtone, you know, used to project towards African Americans, that you know, that they used to say that the slave owners, that the African American were out back, you know, raping you know, the women,
Right.
and they were getting
Right.
high on marijuana. And that's how that whole word, you know, stepped from. So
Propaganda, crazy.
you're correct. So we do need to, as we move through this more professionally, to, you know, adjust some of our vocabulary, how we approach this, and then in part just the journey of what you said exactly regarding empowering women in this industry. And it's something that you see. I had someone that reached out to me specifically about one state where I can't remember which state it was, but the equality in terms of the opportunity isn't there. So I agree with that message, that not only from a female perspective, but then allowing people to continue growing their own medicine at home. All those things are just so important to keep this out from becoming a big monster industry like big pharma or tobacco. It needs to stay where it started, and that's the grassroots movement of what you guys are doing. And Oklahoma definitely is going to be, you know, setting the stage for a lot of states to follow in terms of the work that you guys are doing. So hats off to all of you and the work that you're doing there.
Thank you. It's been quite a journey. And the beautiful thing too is that as 788 has started, we've had a year, you can see alliances being formed where people who truly have the patient passion, they're recognizing it, whether they're in Oklahoma City. I mean, you came from Moore, which is basically the Oklahoma City area. And so they came here because it's not about, oh, your clinic. And this isn't about competition. This is about helping the patient. And so we're all here because we've linked arms to say, you know what, if you do it right, the money will come. But we're, you know, and my mentor told me that. She goes, she got that little finger and she was about up to here on me. If you're in this for the money, you will never sustain. If you're in this for the patient, the money will come.
Yep.
And I said, yes, ma'am. And then she told me about the Mattel story. Don't ever give up more than 50% of your business.
Maintain that ownership percent no matter where it is.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
and I was
absolutely.
going to ask you, in this clinic, we don't use the actual cannabis plant, but we bring seeds in and we show them the difference between seed planting versus putting it in water. So we teach them to grow it from a seed. We have edibles classes where they can come and have edibles. We have a Cannabis 101 on the endocannabinoid system. I have a police officer come in and talk about cannabis and your legal rights. So
Nice.
we're trying to get a huge, everything we possibly can.
Yep. 360 approach to it. I absolutely love it. So, and I know you guys are getting ready here for the second part of the documentary that you're filming so so let's go ahead and let's wrap up this session. But I would love to do this again to share the work that you're doing, catch up, and you have a few other guests that you would like to introduce as well, as far as the male perspective. So feel free to jump in and introduce them on our podcast.
It's a pleasure to have Mr. Roger Doris with us today.
Hey, Roger, it's Carlos. Nice to meet you.
Yes, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Roger Doris, and I'm a patient of cannabis, and I have a great testimony. I started it a few months ago. I gave my testimony right here, and since then I've came a long ways with speaking in clarity and thinking in clarity, and now I'm going on ahead and pursuing being a cannabis pastor. So that way, because it's okay to have your medicine and still worship God. And Jesus Christ, He's our Lord and Savior. They're the ones that give us this plant to use as we see needed.
Yep.
Roger, how did you get injured?
How did I get
Yeah,
injured?
let him know how you got injured.
Well, on Easter Sunday, when I was 14 years old, I was in a plane crash. And I had traumatic brain injuries. I had passed away on the impact of the crash, and I had come back to life. I had taken that blanket over myself. And I did a prayer before we crashed. God, please take me to heaven or put me back here on earth to do your work. Well,
Yeah,
that was when I was 14 years old, okay? But now I went through life, living the life of a free man, the big wide road, Anyway, I went down that road last time I did my testimony. I went to prison, and I was saved. I went through college. I got my degree in ministry, and I've been out several years, and I've been watching and hiding in the closet with my cannabis, not knowing that, I still go back to Genesis. God gave us everything on this earth, all plants, all herbs, all flowers to use as we want. And it's okay, My first sermon is going to be about love. And across the world, we love the plant. God gave us the plant to love.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. It's very impactful when you hear stories and you hear people's testimony of how much things have changed, and obviously the direction that you're going. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I wanted to add one slight thing to that. I'm going to be mobile, and I'm going to have backing to back me up with RSO for veterans, and for anybody else that needs help. That is what I'm going to be here for. If you need help with your grow, I'm going to come over there and I'm going to help you. This is all free of charge.
Right on.
And if you need somebody to come over and just visit, I'm here.
Yeah, that's terrific. That is terrific.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to go ahead and close out the session with go ahead if you want to add to that, or if you had anything else to say. Go ahead.
Sat down.
Yeah. I just want to say that I'm just thrilled to death that cannabis can help our vets, whether it's traumatic brain injury, whether pain, insomnia, any malady that cannabis can help. I just love it because it's good, quick relief, and it gets them off all them drugs that we all know the salad that you're on.
Yeah,
It's helping the whole.
Helping the hope.
Absolutely.
There you go. That's right.
Absolutely.
that's why we say our show isn't just for veterans; it's for patients. Any patient,
Right
any knowledge should be shared.
Sure.
And when you hit that share button, you're sharing that knowledge to other people. It's not just sharing our show or helping us, get to reach more people, but you're sharing the knowledge to others that, maybe one strain may work for one person, but it may not for another. But hey, what if I give you another option to try a different strain that supposedly works?
Eliminating pathways.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly right.
We will definitely do this again. And Laura, I know you're getting ready for your second portion of your documentary. So much love to all of you and the work that you're doing. And I look forward to being able to get to Oklahoma to shake hands, give hugs, and all that kind of great stuff. And again, for our listeners, it's been another edition of Cannabis Culture with Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine. We also have several other guests with us today. So also the Oklahoma Medical Cannabis Information Resource Center, 788 Media. And Laura, please plug anyone else that I forgot.
John Fraser, Old School, Raymond,
Wake and Grow.
We've got Taffy over here. We have Dr. Dory, Renee Harper, Green Hope Wellness, Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine. We have Lindsay and Josh with Green Relief. We have Cody here, who's getting his recommendation.
Woo! Right on.
Ashley Rawson. And we will just creating new.
By the way,
new
found out
rules.
today, 1 in 10
Awesome.
have their life.
1 in 10 now. 1 in 10
Oh, cool.
Oklahomans have their
That's
medical marijuana license.
That's terrific. That's terrific. So we'll be back for our Rogue 420 fans. We'll be back next week with another podcast of Cannabis Culture. So thank you all for listening in. Please like, share, subscribe, and more importantly, this message does not get sent out unless you're sharing. So please share that in your network with your friends, family, and loved ones. This is just such an important message. So thank you all so much.
Thank
Wow, thank
you.
you.